Tucker Carlson kept going after this man after the feds cleared him, after there was an investigation. He just doesn't care.
Yeah.
He does not care. And I was screaming when I was watching this, like, he should sue. He completely should sue, because this is a private citizen. Now, since this has all happened, Ray Epps has faced an avalanche of hate and harassment to the point that he's left his home. He lives in an RV with his wife, and they just travel around so nobody can find him. And his business has fallen apart. So he has damages. I mean, he definitely has damages that he could prove. So I think he should be getting a lawyer yesterday, but that's me.
Hello and welcome to the Aaron Rupar Show. Today I'm excited to be joined by Juliet Jeske. Juliet is the author of the Decoding Fox News newsletter. She is a returning guest and an expert on right-wing media, so we will talk about Tucker Carlson's floundering Twitter show, the new Tucker-free Fox News primetime lineup that debuts next week, and a whole lot more. So please stay tuned for that. But I wanted to begin today just by thanking everyone for all of the love and support I've received over the past month as I have dealt with the passing of my dad. My dad, Bob Rupar, was a wonderful father, a wonderful grandfather, and so his passing has hit all of us, including myself, quite hard. When I last recorded the show about a month ago, he was in the hospital with recurrence of leukemia. He had fought through so many of those over the years, basically the 10 years since he was first diagnosed with blood cancer, that I think myself and other members of my family sort of, thought that he would fight through just about anything, but it gets harder and harder to kick out every time you have one of those recurrences. And ultimately, he did not make it out of the hospital this time. He passed away the Saturday following the most recent podcast that I recorded. And so obviously I needed to take a little bit of time to process that. The first week after his passing was consumed with the funeral, writing his obituary, spending time with family, all those sorts of things. And then I thought it was important to also take a couple weeks after that to just kind of clear my head as best I could, try to come to terms with things. And, I've heard from so many people out there expressing condolences, sharing their own stories of loved ones that they've lost and how they've dealt with that. And even just 3 or 4 weeks out, I'm realizing that grief is not a linear thing, that time may numb some of the wounds from something like this, but it doesn't really heal them. And so part of me wanted to take a longer break, and clear my head even a little bit more if that's possible. But ultimately, I realized that my dad would want me to keep going, and it feels important to kind of dive back in at this point. And so diving back in is what I am doing this week and going forward. But I wanted to take a moment at the top of the show and just thank everyone for being so kind and wonderful as I've dealt with this family tragedy. But again, I'm back at it. This week I have Juliet on the show. Next week I have Simon Rosenberg, a longtime Democratic strategist, 30 years in politics, who is now writing a popular Substack called The Hopium Chronicles. So we'll be talking a lot of politics together next week on the show, and I have lots of great guests coming up in the weeks and months to come. So I'm back on the schedule now of recording these shows on Wednesday, dropping them early Thursday morning, first thing. So if you are watching this on YouTube, I ask that you please like this episode and please subscribe to the show. And if you are like me and listening to the audio version, I'm very much a person who likes my podcasts in audio form. You can find the podcast wherever you get your audio podcasts. I ask that you please subscribe there and share it within your circle to help spread the word as well. So without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Juliet. Hello and welcome to the Aaron Rupar Show. Today I'm thrilled to be joined by Juliet Jeske. Juliet is a returning guest to the show, and actually the last time that we spoke was back in March, and at that time Tucker Carlson was a big topic between you and I. You were tracking him quite closely for your Decoding Fox News newsletter, and as we were DMing kind of in preparation for the show today, you mentioned that you have been watching a lot of Tucker's Twitter shows. Of course, since March, Tucker was fired by Fox News. He's now doing a show on Twitter. I was kind of appalled yesterday to see that. Well, first of all, he did an interview with Andrew Tate, who is a credibly accused sex pest. And so that's bad in and of itself. But then secondly, it was 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
So, it brought to mind that meme of I'm not reading all that, basically, which I actually posted that on Twitter. Did you watch his show with Andrew Tate? Did you stomach that at all? Or?
I haven't been able to because it's 2.5 hours long. It's just, I saw it and I was like, oh man, 2.5 hours long. Are you nuts? I will get to it. I've watched every other one. I reviewed them last night. in anticipation of this interview.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and because they're short, most of them are really short,
Yeah.
and they're just off. He doesn't even come close to telling the truth in any of them,
Yeah.
especially in regards to Hunter Biden. He's saying, "Oh, we've got proof that it was money laundering and racketeering, and he was a foreign agent." I'm like, we have absolutely no proof of any of that, and you're just making stuff up yet again. So that was he's just outrageous in the stuff that he says. And then, oh, there goes the cat. Sorry. And then he, basically was saying some really awful things about Ukraine, like making Zelensky out to be the villain, of course. Yeah. And I knew he would get worse when was no longer tethered to Fox News, but he's definitely gotten worse.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you because, we talked about this a little bit too in our DM exchange that, Media Matters actually went through and crunched the numbers in terms of the views that Tucker's show on Twitter is doing. And the one that I jotted down here was that the first episode of the show did 120 million views. And now that's a little bit of a deceiving metric because they basically on Twitter count views as if you just scroll past a tweet in your timeline. So it's not actually tracking like people who are watching the video. They used to have a video view metric, but that was one of the changes that Elon implemented a few months back, which I actually found to be quite annoying because I used to like to kind of track which videos really blew up. And now it's really hard. It's basically, it quantifies how many people are looking at your Twitter feed more than how many people are looking at specific videos that you post. But anyway, Tucker went from 120 million for the first episode, which was just a couple months ago, to for the most recent one pre this Andrew Tate interview, just did 9 million. So, I mean, that is a huge decline. And, it kind of, those numbers, kind of caused a whole round of commentary around, what's accounting for Tucker's kind of fading star. Wasn't a bad idea for him to do this show on Twitter and maybe not partner with like the Daily Wire or a more established outlet that could have helped him promote it a little bit more. Or is it just the fact that, as you kind of touched upon a little bit, that, the production quality for these shows is very low. They seem kind of slapdash, many of them, as though there hasn't been a lot of effort, almost like he's writing them or someone's writing them for him in the morning and then they're shooting them in the afternoon. They seem very kind of slapdash. And so, I mean, what's your take? You said you watched all of them. What do you think accounts for the, the kind of the fading popularity of his broadcast at this point?
I think they look sloppy. They look like he's talking out of a shed. And you can see like grass behind him or trees or some sort of greenery behind him, like his open door. And it's just him sitting in like what literally looks like a shed or some type of garage that's not actually a garage. And then, he's in a suit and that just looks odd with no set to go with the suit. So it's like, okay, so it's a weird dude sitting in a suit in his shed talking, and like Pete Davidson, I'm gonna get his name wrong. No, not Pete Davidson.
is
not Pete Davidson, the one who dates
right?
everybody. Pete Dominic.
Oh, okay, sure. Big difference.
A huge difference. One I adore, one I'm like, ugh. But Pete Dominic shoots a show out of a shed, but he's a comedian and it's like a different vibe. And he jokes about it all the time on air. He's like, I'm in my shed. But like to have Tucker Carlson do that is like, what are you to go from a professional looking set, Fox News, having an entire crew support him, to just this random dude talking, like, I'm just going to say this, random 14-minute monologue for no reason. It really doesn't help him. And I think you can see from it how much having that professional crew really did elevate him. He looks foolish now. I think his content is difficult to watch. It's difficult to follow. He doesn't have guests. It's just sloppy, no graphics, no. The other thing that I think I'm realizing watching, because I literally like marathoned them all last night. I'd watched them before, but I was like, I really want to embody this again. So I just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and just one right after the other. And what was interesting is one thing that he was very reliant upon, and they all are on Fox, is the media clip, where they'll pull something from CNN, they'll pull something from MSNBC, from The View, that sort of thing, and then they joke on it. And they do it quite a bit. It's very, they're very dependent on the media clip that they pull, so they can goof on, joke on, and he doesn't do that for these little shed shows. It's just him talking. and it just comes across as like odd. It just doesn't work. It's like he screwed up his own formula. And I also think that who the hell is going to watch a long like I don't know who's going to watch
Two and
the
a half
Andrew Tate
hours.
on
Yeah.
Twitter. I will,
Oh.
because this is my job, and I will sit there with my Snagit on my little computer, like just sucking it out. But it's like, I don't know how anybody over the age of like 50 is going to sit on Twitter going, oh, I want to watch a 2.5 hour video of Andrew Tate, just odd.
That was the funny thing about, you probably noticed this as well, that, again, we shouldn't maybe joke too much about the Andrew Tate, platforming him, because that's really bad.
It's horrible.
Right. And so, horrible. I mean, it's really nothing to laugh over, although I did find it amusing that Elon, posted a tweet promoting the show and basically saying something to the effect of like, interesting conversation. And then about an hour later, he promoted a follow-up, or he posted a follow-up basically saying, and by the way, you can watch this on double speed, I mean, almost as if like, yeah, I tried to get through this, but it was so boring that like, if you need to speed it up to twice the speed, here you go. So, even Elon, I think, had kind of a hard time stomaching the 2.5 hours, which, kind of has the vibe of like a Joe Rogan broadcast or podcast, because his, regularly clock in at between 2 and 3. But I would say Tucker is no Rogan in terms of just the appeal of Rogan is kind of the shoot from the hip, the kind of boys being boys, and Tucker doesn't really have that type of charisma to him, I wouldn't say. So I'll be interested to see how that kind of washes out in terms of the views. I haven't checked this morning to see that, but for a whole bunch of reasons, the person that you're platforming, the content, the length, it seemed like kind of a weird choice.
It's odd. And it is very strange that we live in a time right now where Andrew Tate can get a 2.5 hour interview on this huge platform. And at the same time, it's Sound of Freedom. Is that horrible movie, the QAnon movie, is also like booming. And you're like, hi, Andrew Tate is an actual, probably sex trafficker, but you're going to watch this movie that's fiction, that's based on, kind of fantastical, sex trafficking, of course, happens, but the movie is definitely taking a lot of liberties. You're going to watch that movie that's a kind of a, fictionalized version of reality. And then you have an actual person who's proudly saying, yeah, I abuse women, I treat them like dirt and blah, blah, blah. And you don't, that's okay. So it's very strange to me. That's
been kind of a through line with Republican politics. I feel like going back, we can think back on Pizzagate in 2016, which the idea there was that, Democrats are sex traffickers. And of course, it was this really fantastic conspiracy theory. But along the way, whenever there has been a Republican who has been either accused or convicted of sex trafficking, it's like, the QAnon people seem remarkably unbothered by those cases. It's only the ones that are kind of convenient politically that they care about. I mean, not that we need further refutation of QAnon or Pizzagate, but you're right that there seems to be, these people who are the most concerned, so it seems, about sex trafficking are also cool with Andrew Tate and Tucker Carlson interviewing him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need a lot of cognitive dissonance to, kind of make sense of that.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. It's like, or Matthew, Matthew Gates, is like the idea that if it's like a teenage girl, no big deal. It's, even though that's somebody's daughter who's underage, they don't it doesn't seem to bother them. Or like a preacher or a priest, or like Fox did a number where they completely ignored. There was another big, huge sex scandal in the Catholic Church in Baltimore. I'm a former Catholic. I was raised Catholic. So I follow every single time when this happens. I'm like on that story, like, I'm just getting mad. But there was a thing in Baltimore, where it was another diocese, and then there was another diocese in Illinois, and Fox just never mentions it. That didn't happen.
And they have Cardinal Dolan on Fox and Friends every now and then. Yep. And he keeps it, they don't really get into politics, which obviously makes sense, but they don't cover the scandal aspect of it. I wanted to ask you, I know you're kind of more immersed on the content side, but I feel like as kind of, journalists or sort of the news ecosystem, we kind of zoomed right past the Tucker Carlson firing story in the sense that I don't know if we ever really learned exactly what happened there. And maybe it is just kind of a story where I think, we kind of want stories to be neat and clean, where it was like, this is the reason that happened. And maybe it was just kind of this accumulation of him bad-mouthing, using misogynistic language about female executives and, kind of things of that nature that added up where, the decision was made to fire him. But what's your working theory of the case there? Why do you think Tucker Carlson was fired when he was, one of the top rated along with the 5 broadcasters on Fox?
Well, I can only guess. I mean, I know
Yeah.
he's working on a book, and it's going to be revealed with Chadwick Moore, I believe, is writing a book. And he's bragging about all will be revealed in the book as a way to hype up the book sales. Based on everything I've read, I think it had more to do with the fact that yet another female employee was like, sexual harassment, this horrible work environment, in combination with the emails and text messages where Tucker Carlson in the Dominion voting systems defamation lawsuit, all this stuff got revealed, and emails and text messages that were never meant to be public suddenly were public. And in them, Tucker Carlson openly disparaged, some of the top female executives, especially the woman who works in PR. And he was brutal towards her, just absolutely vicious towards her. And when it was even revealed that this stuff is going to be made public, he was like, yeah, I'm glad it'll be made public. He really was that arrogant. He thought he was untouchable. He had the highest ratings. He didn't care. And he just thought he could say whatever he wanted. And he was proud of it. And I think it was a combination of that plus the Abby Grossberg. I hope I'm getting her last name right. Grossberg.
I think it's right. Yeah.
I know it was Abby. Was the first name.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Getting the $12 million settlement, which is actually small for Fox. So I think, and which is hilarious that they've elevated Jesse Waters, who's constantly disparaging women online, on air. He says horrible things about women on camera during a show. And they're like, it's great. We'll give him the APM slot. But I think it was probably a combination of all of that. And I would guess that there's probably a power struggle between him and executives that had gone on for a while. And they were just fed up and having to pay out $750 million in a defamation settlement. They had to cut. I think they were probably looking at liabilities and just that this guy's a liability. We got to let him go because he's, we could get another lawsuit because of him, and they might because of Ray Epps. Who knows?
That's what I was just plucking away in my keyboard to look up is the New York Times had this big story just over the weekend on Ray Epps. I don't have all the details right in front of me, but basically Tucker pushed conspiracy theories while he was still on Fox about this guy who lives down in Arizona. And now, the Times had a write-up over the weekend under the headline, the case that could be Fox's next Dominion. The idea being that this Ray Epps fellow might be able to sue Tucker, for possibly billions of dollars. And so, you might be right to kind of suggest that they were taking, Fox was taking inventory of liabilities, and they probably realized that there were cases like this that could be coming down the pike as well. That would have been even more problematic had he still been on the payroll there. Have you followed this one close to the Ray Epps? Let me give us, if you do know kind of the broad outlines, what's going on there?
Well, Ray Epps was a man who went to January 6th, and he's tall, so he sticks out. He's a tall, big guy. And he was like shouting, go here, let's do this, let's do that. But then Ray Epps left early before it got really ugly. And he sent some text messages that sort of proved that he'd left early. And there's other evidence that he left early and didn't actually enter the Capitol, didn't actually damage anything, didn't hurt anybody. And because he stuck out and because he was telling people, let's go here, let's go there, this and that, some conspiracy theorists decided that he was a Fed and that he was, a federal agent that was entrapping people into criminal behavior. This was not true. Ray Epps owned a business in Arizona that had to do with weddings and special events and was just a private citizen. He had nothing to do with the federal government. And Tucker Carlson seized upon this conspiracy theory, probably more than anybody on Fox, and he just kept running with it. And he would push it frequently. He would go, well, let's talk about Ray Epps. And then he would say, this man, and then he'd take clips out of context and just show this very tall, strapping man, saying, hey guys, let's go, let's do this. And he'd say, see, and nothing happened to him. Nothing happened to him. Then the feds did an entire investigation on Ray Epps and they cleared him of any wrongdoing. They said, obviously wasn't a Fed. There's no evidence that he was working with the federal government. There was an entire hearing on it. Then one other thing happened where in the testimony, it was sort of this kind of gray area of exactly when he left. It was like, I left around and that's it. And then Tucker Carlson, in that dump of footage that he got through Speaker McCarthy, he found and he pinpointed the exact time when Ray Epps probably left, which was like 2:20 or something like that. And he goes, see, Ray Epps lied. And I'm like, no, actually, if you look at the testimony, it doesn't give an exact time. It's kind of open-ended. It says around. And the people who were interviewing him were fine with that. And that was, again, sworn testimony. And they were like, okay, that's fine. And they had evidence that he got to his hotel room at X amount of time or whatever. So they were okay with around 2:00. And Tucker Carlson seized upon that and said, this is evidence that he lied. And I'm like, no, it is not. And this was after he was cleared. So Tucker Carlson kept going after this man after the feds cleared him, after there was an investigation. He just doesn't care.
Yeah.
He does not care. And I was screaming when I was watching this, like, he should sue. He completely should sue, because this is a private citizen. Now, since this has all happened, Ray Epps has faced an avalanche of hate and harassment to the point that he's left his home. He lives in an RV with his wife, and they just travel around so nobody can find him. And his business is falling apart. So he has damages. I mean, he definitely has damages that he could prove. So I think he should be getting a lawyer yesterday, but that's me.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of the perfect conspiracy theory for Tucker, because the idea was that this Epps fellow was a secret government agent. And so just because the government's coming out and saying, no, he's not, it's kind of unfalsifiable, because that's exactly what you would say if someone was a secret government agent. And so, it was meant to kind of advance this idea that January 6th was an inside job, that, there's more to the story than Trump supporters trying to overthrow the government. And so, but I don't doubt that Fox probably saw this ahead of time as being a potential major liability, and maybe that played a role in the thinking to oust Tucker. But you mentioned Jesse Waters. I do want to, before we wrap up here, pivot a little bit to the big new primetime lineup, which debuts next week. It feels like Fox now, since Tucker was fired, which I believe happened 2-3 months ago at this point, has kind of been in a holding pattern. This week, I think they have Piers Morgan doing Tucker's old time slot, which that was one where, I kind of, after the kids get to bed, which is usually towards the end of Tucker's time slot or his old time slot, I kind of check in just to see, see who the guests were. And when I saw that it was Piers this week hosting, I've mostly just kind of skipped the show entirely, because he's not the type of person I really want to spend a lot of time watching. And I don't know if the ratings kind of bear that out, or if I'm kind of unique in that respect. But, they've kind of been this holding pattern doing the different guest hosts for a few months. And they eventually settled, as you mentioned earlier, on Jesse Waters being the new person in that time slot that Tucker used to have. What do you think that says about the direction that primetime is going? I think it was Matthew Gertz at Media Matters this morning, pointing out that the new primetime lineup, which is Laura Ingraham and then Jesse and then Hannity, I mean, these are all kind of down the line Trumpers. And so, he was kind of suggesting that maybe this, is kind of nodding towards some sort of detente with Trump, or, kind of a warming up toward Trump ahead of his likely presidential run as the Republican nominee. But what's your 2 cents on that? Is that kind of your read on it as well?
I'm not really sure yet, because Piers Morgan last night had on Chris Christie for an extended period of time. And it was very odd. It was a very odd appearance, because Chris Christie was on for 7 minutes, and he mostly spoke about Trump, and disparagingly, just like, Trump's an idiot. Trump's terrible. I would never work with Trump. I don't care. He can't mend that bridge. Trump's this, Trump's that. Trump didn't get the wall. Trump didn't get, he was just ripping on Trump for 7 solid minutes, and nobody was stopping him. And he's done that before. They've had Chris Christie on before in that, on that show on Fox News Tonight with other hosts, and they just let him go. And they don't talk about Chris Christie running for president. He just spends the whole time ripping on Trump. So I'm not sure what they're doing with Trump. It's very odd. I don't know. They also have odd moments where, on Fox and Friends, Steve Doocy out of nowhere just start talking about, Glenn
Youngkin.
Youngkin, thank you, should run for president, and was interviewing him briefly, and you should do it. You should throw your hat in the race. So it's very odd. They have a very odd relationship with Trump. I think they'll go with whoever gets the nomination, and they'll go full throttle. They don't care. They have no integrity. But I think they have a very odd relationship with Trump right now, because I think they can see the writing on the wall, because I've heard, again, Steve Doocy and other guests and hosts say things out loud, such as, I don't think he can win the general. And I've seen that multiple times on that. And we didn't see that 4 years ago. So I think that, or not 4 years ago, but the last election.
Yeah.
Pardon my brain for a second there, but
Yeah,
I was like, wait a second.
Together.
They all turned into one election. It feels like we're always having an election. That's the problem.
I've been joking that it's going to be amusing in a way when Trump loses the general in 2024 and then he's a Republican nominee again in 28 because which Republican is going to defeat him at this point? I mean, it seems like as long as he's alive and wanting to run, the nomination is pretty much his. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right that people want to talk in very general terms about, kind of the Trump-Fox relationship. And it is pretty complex. I mean, even yesterday, Trump was on Truth Social trashing on Fox and like highlighting how their stock has dipped and this and that. But then, Hannity tonight is going to have a big announcement that he's doing another town hall with Trump next week. And so, obviously Hannity has been aboard the Trump train since basically day one, going back all the way to 2015. But, the one thing that kind of caught my eye with the press release that Fox issued ahead of Hannity's announcement announcing this town hall event is that just like the one that Trump did with Hannity last month, they are pre-recording it like hours before the airtime. I guess probably in part to edit out some of the defamatory statements that Trump will likely make. So it seems like they've at least learned their lesson to that extent, where they're not just giving him, like an open live mic. They are giving him, an open mic, but they're editing it after the fact.
Well, the last one you could see it. There's a couple times where you could clearly see a very awkward edit.
Yeah.
Where they just cut him off. And then all of a sudden we're on to a new question. And I'm like, oh, what did he say? Come on. Because I'm sure he just went on much longer about something and said horrible things. And they just went cutting that out. So, I saw that last night and I just rolled my eyes and went, oh, here we go again. I'm going to do another annotated version.
Yeah.
Which is 2 minutes long. And I just break it down and get sarcastic. It's one of my specialties that I'm sort of.
No, you do great work at that.
Thank
and
you.
You've also, are you doing the, I've mostly been kind of checked out of the news for the past month as I took some personal time. So this is actually the longest that I have gone kind of not paying attention to Trump. And obviously, his campaign has kind of been intensifying in that he's doing all these events. He's giving speeches, mainly in Iowa and New Hampshire. But have you been watching a lot of his rallies lately?
I haven't, other than, no, I only watch him when, just for my own sanity and not to drive my followers crazy. I watch it basically when it's big enough that it's going to get enough press that people will pay attention. Like if it's on Fox, because that's my job, or if it's something with an indictment, like if it's related to one of his criminal indictment. Like I've gotten both of those huge speeches, but I couldn't watch every single rally. I'd lose my mind. And it would just be redundant too, to be like, oh, he had another rally. Like, I don't want to do that, but, no, it's just more, pretty much every day there's more bad news for him, legally speaking. Like he just keeps losing in court, like everything he tries to slow something down. There was just a decision in the case against E.G. Carroll. She just got something, that, there was a thing he was trying to block her from another defamation lawsuit, and she just won in court. So that looks good for her. That's the woman who accused him of rape. Yeah. And she's already won one defamation suit against him. So
and then she wanted to add to her complaint based on statements that Trump made at his CNN town hall. I'm not sure if the development that you're referring to had anything to do with that. I know that she was considering a fresh lawsuit, over claims that were made after the initial one was filed. So yeah, every time he opens his mouth, and Fox is aware of this, it creates more legal problems either for him or for, entities supporting him. So yeah.
Yeah, he just keeps getting in trouble. Like everything legally that's coming out lately, every decision that comes out just doesn't look good for him. It just keeps getting worse. And then Giuliani's not looking great. Stuff is looking, he could get disbarred completely. So it'll be interesting to see what's happening. But he has been, the last 3 weeks on Fox has been Hunter Biden, pretty much.
Yeah. I wanted to get to that before we wrap, because you have done a series of newsletters on Fox's coverage of Hunter Biden. And I know the kind of the news peg for your series, which dates back now. I think you've been writing about this, not exclusively, you've been writing about other things too, but was this Fox Nation series that they have done on Hunter, which is narrated, I believe, by Janine Pirro. So
Lovely.
that screams credibility right away.
Right away.
Yeah, watch it at night over a couple drinks, I guess. But what's up with this? Because it is, I think, for kind of normal people, this obsession with Hunter Biden. I can imagine that for most, I would assume it's kind of weird that Fox is so obsessed. I mean, you actually, and I posted this tweet that got some traction, and thank you for compiling this, which was just a screen grab from your newsletter. You went through and broke down the mentions. This was for the last week of June into a couple days of July. And let's see, I think I actually jotted down the numbers here because oh yeah, so the little tidbit that I jotted down was that Hunter was mentioned more times on Fox programming than both Trump and DeSantis combined.
It's true.
Over that period of time. And so, like, what's going on here? Why is Fox so obsessed with this guy?
I think they view him as a liability for Biden, obviously, and it's the never-ending story because they never have actually found any real hard evidence that's linked him to any crime. That's not going to stop them from taking a tiny little nugget from the laptop or from some other found evidence and going, look, see, if you put this together with this, it will equal a crime. And we've got him. And it's just this never ending. It's if you watch their coverage, they always say, if we can prove. And it's like that word is so important to them. And I think they love it because it's a way to constantly stick Biden in the side and make it into this never-ending scandal. It's kind of similar to the email scandal in that they never let that die. They still talk about that. They still bring it up with Hillary's emails. And with the the Hunter Biden laptop story, what's so fascinating about it is, that laptop's been dissected and broken down and picked apart, and they still can't find any crimes on it, and they won't give it up. The two things that Hunter Biden has pleaded guilty to had nothing to do with the laptop. Absolutely nothing. The gun is in his memoir. The fact that he threw away a gun is in a published memoir. That was not exactly hidden information. And the taxes he paid 2 years ago, he knew he hadn't paid taxes for 2 years because he was in the throes of addiction. His accountant died. And then he went ahead and paid the taxes. And then he's agreed to this, this plea agreement where he was like, sorry, my bad. And he's been put on probation. But it's been, I just think it's a constant scab that they can pick at. And so when they've got nothing else to do in the past 3 weeks, they haven't had much else, because last week it was all cocaine, even though wasn't Hunter Biden. They were trying to imply that it is Hunter Biden.
Well, I was going to mention that because I was watching Maria Bartiromo this morning, and you don't really do much Fox business, right? You're more on the Fox, which I mean, I was actually joking on Twitter yesterday, which I'm kind of proud of myself for this insight that, Fox Business is basically Fox News with the stock ticker at the bottom, because it's kind of all the same. It's the same content basically. And Maria's show, I think, is actually in some ways the most unhinged of any of them, because, of course, there were the two revelations last week that kind of knocked down a lot of these Hunter conspiracy theories. One being that the U.S. attorney who was investigating Hunter, who was appointed by Trump, wrote a letter to Congress basically saying, I've been under no pressure. I was able to conduct the investigation the way I wanted to. And that kind of cut against this conspiracy theory that the DOJ has been interfering in the Hunter probe and trying to protect him. And then, of course, we had the detail of the, I think the guy's name is Gail Luft, right? Who was...
Yes, he's nutty.
Yeah, a nutty guy who was one of Comer's. I guess it wasn't quite related to the Hunter stuff, but it was more related to the idea that the Biden family is kind of a crime syndicate. And he was one of the whistleblowers about, Biden being bribed by China. Well, it turned out that this Gail Luft guy had been indicted on a variety of charges before he started blowing the whistle.
Yeah.
And then went abroad because he skipped bail. And this was one of Comer's prized whistleblowers. Well, Maria Bartiromo is just pushing ahead as though these things never happened and kind of suggesting that the U.S. attorney who was appointed by Trump is lying about the Hunter Biden stuff, and that this Luft guy was actually just indicted recently instead of the reality, which was that it happened last November. But anyway, the reason that I bring this up is because, another thing that I kind of took note of this morning as I was watching Maria is that they're really leaning into trying to blame Hunter Biden for the cocaine, coming right out, basically saying, suggesting he was there. And, circling back to the conversation we had about defamation a few minutes ago, I mean, I was kind of thinking wow, he might actually have a real case here, because there's no evidence to suggest that Hunter brought cocaine into the White House. And yet, they're basically running with this. And of course, they kind of they're careful to kind of couch it around, allegations or, oh, doesn't it make sense that this would be him or something like that? But like, there's no evidence to suggest that that's what happened here.
It would be more difficult for him to win because he would be considered a public figure. And when there's a lot written about you, it's just I have a hair in my lip. Anyway, it's when you're a public figure and there's a lot of articles written about you, it's harder to prove defamation in a court of law. And they know that. And I think that's why they go after that's why they can almost say anything they want about Hillary and get away with it, because she's when you're an elected official and a public figure, even though she's retired, it's like the bar is super high. He might, because he's not an elected official, there might be more going on there, but the stuff they've said about him is outrageous because there's proof that he left Friday. The cocaine was found Sunday. And the fact that this is an area where people are, have eyes on everything all the time. The idea that it would sit there for 2 days is absurd. Even Kayleigh McEnany said that multiple times on air. She said, oh no, there's no way it would sit there for 2 days. It would sit there for a few minutes. Yeah, Kayleigh McEnany said that.
Okay.
Kayleigh McEnany.
Well, welcome to the resistance, Kayleigh.
I couldn't believe it. And then she was on, I believe, they kind of blur together. I don't know if it was Fox News Tonight or Hannity last night, and they brought it up again. And I'm sitting there going, is she going to cave? Is she going to go back on her word and change what she said? She said twice on Fox and Friends, there's no way it could be Hunters, because she was going by, I can't, I have the clip.
Oh man.
I have the clip.
Okay. Did you put it on Twitter?
It's on Twitter. It's on Twitter. Because she said on a Friday, she did the math, and she goes, if it was Friday and it was found in this spot, and she was going through all the details of the White House, and she says there's no way it could be him, because it wouldn't sit there for 2 days. There's no way it would sit there for 2 days. That's what she said. And I'm jumping out of my skin going, oh my God. And it was in my last podcast. I called it Kayleigh McEnany Goes Rogue. And I played the clip because I was freaking out. So she was on one of the shows last night. Fox News Tonight or Hannity, don't remember, because they kind of turned into the same show. Yeah. But she said they brought it up and she did not backpedal. She was like, yeah, I don't think based on the timeline, it could be, she didn't say, wasn't as declarative. She didn't say it could not be Hunter Biden's, but she basically did not back down. She didn't change her story. And she's like, well, she even said, I think we can clear the press because the press doesn't go anywhere near that area. And people were saying it could have been a member of the press. And I'm like, how much do you think we get paid? Cocaine's expensive. Right. That's the first thing I thought. I'm like, what journalist
TV reporters?
Maybe a TV reporter, sure, somebody who has a show on MSNBC or CNN or something, but most of us do not make a lot of money. So this idea that like I'm like on a grant and donations, like over here, I'm like, anybody thinks I got money to spend on narcotics is like, are you? Cat food's expensive for me. So I would never do narcotics anyway, but I thought that was funny that they said that. Monica Crowley made a comment last night where I put those two clips together. That's on Twitter, where two different shows, an hour apart. Monica Crowley said, inferred that it could have been the press. And then an hour later, like whatever, Monica Crowley. And then she's nutty, but she calls everybody a communist and she's like out to lunch. And then I had Kayleigh McEnany going, oh, it couldn't have been the press. There's no way it was the press. Stuck them together. Boom. It's like one of my favorite things to do is to find them contradicting each other and like, boom.
Sure. Well, they cover all their bases on Fox. It's even if they contradict, even if the bases are contradicting each other, you get both. It's fair and balanced, right? You get the press brought the cocaine, and the press didn't bring the cocaine. So, as we wrap here, what should people be looking out for from you? I know you mentioned obviously you're grant funded, so like, is your plan to keep going with Decoding Fox News all the way through this election cycle, or what's your plan going forward? My plan right now, this is what I did, and this might be nuts, but I really love doing this kind of work, and I want to continue doing this kind of work. What I did is I started doing paid subscriptions, started taking paid subscriptions in January, and I have a Patreon, and I've saved all that money for the most part. It's in a separate account. And when my grant ends, I'm planning to pay myself as if I'm still on the grant, same amount of money, until hopefully my paid subscribers get high enough that I won't notice the difference. And right now I'm close. I'm not there yet, but I'm close. I'm getting there. And, it's been great. I kind of took a lead from you because you're also reader supported, and as are many others. And you've been doing this a lot longer than me. And I just love the idea of being reader supported, because it's like, now nobody can tell me what to do. No corporation could just, come in and lay me off with no warning. I can't have an editor come in and say, no, you can't cover that
because we don't want you to cover that. We want you to cover this. I don't have to deal with that. So I'm excited, and it's Decoding Fox News on every platform, including Threads now. Go Threads.
Yeah. We didn't really have time to get into that, but no, I noticed that you're closing in on 6 figures Twitter followers, which is kind of a big deal.
I'm at 93,600 or 700.
Oh, there you go. Who's counting though? But
yeah, I know. I count every day.
No, I
it started to go down and went back up again. So I was like, oh, it's finally going back up again.
I had to basically stop counting because I think I'm down like 10,000 over the past week on Twitter. So it's just
people are fleeing the platform.
That's why I was tweeting last night about baseball cards, because it's like, well, if I'm losing followers anyway, I might as well tweet about nonsense and have some fun. But no, I highly recommend, if you're not already subscribed to Decoding Fox News and you're into right-wing media and kind of tracking what's going on there, maybe you don't want to watch it, but you want to follow someone who's watching it so you don't have to. Juliet does great work, and you even went above and beyond in watching the Tucker shows. Because I've dipped in and out of them, but it sounds like you're now my authority on that as well. So I'll keep that in mind going forward too, as either his views continue to go down, or maybe this Andrew Tate one, 2.5 hours long, will be the secret to kind of bring him back to his former heights.
Yeah, and I also have a podcast too that's related to the Substack. It's all one big family podcast newsletter, and I will probably watch the Andrew Tate monstrosity. I'm not sure when, because that's a lot of time to dedicate my computer to capturing one stupid, horrible interview of a scumbag. But that's
that might be, you mentioned you don't use narcotics, but you might want to consider an exception for getting through that, because I would probably need something to numb my senses a little bit if I watched all 2.5 hours of that. That sounds actually kind of like punishment, but it's also news reporting, because this is what's going on in the right wing, and it's important for people to know what's happening there. So, Juliet, thanks a lot for your time. I actually got to hop because I'm going to watch Chris Ray get grilled by Jim Jordan and company. But appreciate it and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. New episodes of the Aaron Rupar Show drop every Thursday. Please like the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and share it with your circle. Thank you for tuning in.